When my daughter's husband told me it'd be better if I stayed in the basement, I smiled and nodded. He said it was just temporary, while they renovated the upstairs. I didn't argue. After all, I'd built this house with my late husband's hands. Every brick, every floorboard, I knew it better than anyone. So when I heard them upstairs whispering about my condition, I just smiled again. Because what my son-in-law didn't know, what he should have checked, was what was still hidden upstairs. The one thing that could turn their little plan upside down. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. The day Claire told me about the renovation, we were sitting in the kitchen. My kitchen. The one where Tom and I had shared 37 years of morning coffee and quiet conversations. She wouldn't look at me directly. Her eyes kept darting to the window, to her phone, anywhere but my face. "Mom, we think it would be easier if you stayed downstairs for a while, just until we finish the work on the guest room." Easier. That word hung in the air like dust in sunlight. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, stirring my tea. "Whatever you think is best." Her husband, Derek, stood in the doorway, arms crossed. That smile he always wore, the one that never quite reached his eyes, plastered across his face. "We really appreciate your understanding, Linda. It's just, with the stairs and everything, we worry about you." I'd climbed those stairs 10,000 times. I'd carried laundry up them, furniture, boxes of Christmas decorations. I'd walked down them on my wedding night when Tom carried me over the threshold. But now, suddenly, they were dangerous. "I understand," I said. And I did, just not in the way they thought. The basement wasn't terrible, not really. It was finished, with carpet Tom had installed himself one summer when Claire was in high school. There was a small bathroom, a twin bed we'd kept for guests who never came, and a dresser with a mirror that had gone cloudy with age. But it was cold, not just temperature cold, though the cement walls held the chill like a grudge, but cold in the way forgotten places are. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and whispers that you don't matter anymore. I brought down a few things, clothes mostly, some books, and the photograph of Tom that had sat on my nightstand for the past 8 years. The glass was cracked from when I'd knocked it over the night of his funeral, but I'd never replaced it. Somehow the crack seemed right, a map of grief running right through his smile. That first night, I lay in the narrow bed and listened to them moving around above me. The floorboards creaked. The third one from the bathroom always did. Tom had meant to fix it but never got around to it. Now that creak was my clock, my compass. I could track their movements by sound alone. Claire's footsteps were light, hesitant. Derek's were heavier, purposeful. I heard the television click on. Laughter. The sound of their normal life continuing while I lay in the dark below, erased. But here's the thing about being forgotten. It gives you time to remember. I remembered the day Tom and I broke ground on this house. We were young then, barely 30, with dreams bigger than our bank account. We'd saved for 7 years to buy this plot of land. 7 years of extra shifts and skipped vacations and dinners that were more pasta than anything else. Tom designed the house himself. He wasn't an architect, just a man who loved his wife and wanted to build her something that would last. He drew the plans on graph paper at the kitchen table of our tiny apartment, erasing and redrawing until his fingers were smudged with pencil lead. "It's going to be beautiful," he'd say. "A place where we'll grow old together, where our grandchildren will visit." I'd believed him. We both did. The foundation was the hardest part. Tom insisted on being involved in every step. He'd come home from his day job and work until the light died, mixing concrete, checking levels, making sure everything was perfect. "A house is only as strong as its foundation," he'd tell me. "Get this right, and the rest will stand forever." He was right about that. The foundation never shifted, never cracked. Even now, 43 years later, it was solid, which is more than I could say for the family that lived above it. By the third day, I'd established a routine. I woke early, old habits from decades of making Tom's breakfast before work. I'd shower in the small basement bathroom where the water pressure was weak and the pipes groaned like arthritic joints. Then I'd sit on the edge of the bed and wait. Wait for what I wasn't entirely sure. For Claire to remember I was down here, maybe. For Derek to show a shred of decency. For my life to feel like mine again. Instead, what I got was silence punctuated by the sounds of their life. The coffee maker gurgling. Derek's heavy footsteps heading to the garage. Claire's voice on the phone, too muffled to make out words, but bright enough that I knew she was talking to someone who made her happy. Not me, apparently. I started exploring the basement more carefully. Not because I'd forgotten what was down here, I could never forget, but because I needed something to do. Something to remind myself that I existed, that I had a history that mattered. In the far corner, behind the water heater, I found boxes we'd stored decades ago. Holiday decorations, mostly. Claire's baby clothes, carefully folded and wrapped in tissue paper that had yellowed with age. Tom's old tools, the ones he'd used to build this house. I ran my fingers over the handle of his hammer, worn smooth by his grip. And then I found something I'd forgotten about. A small wooden box, no bigger than a shoebox, tucked behind a stack of old photo albums. It was locked, but the key was taped to the bottom, Tom's idea of security. He'd always been terrible with hiding things. Inside was an envelope, yellowed, creased, with Tom's handwriting across the front. My name, just Linda in his careful script. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Linda," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry for that. I wanted more time with you. I always wanted more time." I had to stop, put the letter down, breathe. The basement suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. After a moment, I continued. "I need you to know something about the house, about what we built together. I've made sure that no matter what happens, it stays yours, completely yours. The paperwork is hidden somewhere safe, somewhere only you would think to look. Do you remember our spot, the place I proposed?" I did remember. Of course I did. How could I forget? "There's more there than just papers, Linda. There's proof of everything we built, everything we planned, everything we wanted for our family. If anyone ever tries to take this from you, you'll have what you need to stop them." The letter ended with his signature, and a single line that made my eyes burn. "I built this house on love. That's a foundation that never crumbles." I sat in the dim basement light, holding that letter like it was made of glass. Tom had known. Somehow, even before he got sick, he'd known that I might need protection. That our dream of growing old in this house together might turn into something else, something complicated by wills and inheritance and people who saw property instead of home. He'd protected me. Even from beyond the grave, he was still taking care of me. But the question was, what did he mean by our spot? We'd had so many spots. The bench in the backyard where we'd watch Claire play. The corner of the living room where we danced on our anniversary. The front porch where he'd kissed me every morning before work. But the proposal, that was specific. He'd proposed in this house. We weren't living here yet. It was barely framed, just wooden bones and hope. But he'd brought me to the site one evening in June, just as the sun was setting. We'd climbed the unfinished stairs to the second floor, stood in what would become our bedroom, and he'd pulled a ring from his pocket. "This is where I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life," he'd said. "Will you marry me here?" I'd said yes, before he'd finished the question. The second floor, our bedroom. That's where I needed to look. But getting upstairs wasn't going to be easy. Derek and Claire were home most of the time now. Derek worked from home, something with computers that I'd never fully understood. And Claire had taken a leave from her teaching job, supposedly to help with the renovation that I'd yet to see any evidence of. The renovation was a lie. I'd known that from the start. There was no construction noise, no workers, no smell of paint or sawdust. Just the quiet rhythm of their daily life, with me tucked away below like an embarrassing secret. I waited for my opportunity, watched their patterns, learned their schedule. Derek left the house every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 9 for what Claire called his client meetings. I suspected they were actually gym sessions. I'd heard her teasing him about his new workout routine. Claire usually went to the grocery store on Wednesday afternoons, a trip that took her at least 2 hours because she was meticulous about comparing prices and brands. Wednesday, that would be my chance. That Wednesday, I listened as Claire's car pulled out of the driveway, counted to 100 to make sure she wasn't coming back for something forgotten. Then I climbed the basement stairs, my heart pounding harder than it had in years. The door at the top wasn't locked. Why would it be? They thought I was safely contained, willing to stay in my place like a piece of furniture they'd tired of but couldn't quite throw away. The main floor was exactly as I'd left it, but also completely different. They'd rearranged the living room furniture. My favorite chair, the one Tom had bought me for our 20th anniversary, was gone. Probably in the garage, or worse, donated to some thrift store. In its place was a sleek modern sofa that looked expensive and uncomfortable. Pictures had been changed too. The wall that had displayed our family photos, a timeline of Claire's life from infant to adult, now showed mostly pictures of Claire and Derek. Their wedding, their vacations, their life that apparently had no room for the woman who'd raised one of them. I felt a flash of anger so sharp it surprised me, but I pushed it down. I didn't have time for anger, not yet. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, my hand trailing along the banister Tom had sanded and stained by hand. The wood was smooth, familiar, like holding an old friend's hand. Our bedroom, though I suppose it was their bedroom now, looked different. New paint, new curtains, new bedding. But the bones of the room were the same. The odd angle of the closet door where Tom had miscalculated during framing. The window that stuck when you tried to open it because the house had settled over the years. The faint outline on the wall where a picture had hung for so long it had protected the paint beneath. I stood in the center of the room where Tom had proposed and closed my eyes, tried to remember exactly where we'd been standing. The house had been just framing then. I'd been able to see through to the neighboring lot, but there had been something already in place, something structural. The built-in bookshelf. Tom had installed it himself, insisting that we needed it, that it was part of his original design. I thought it was odd at the time who installs bookshelves before they have walls. But Tom had been adamant. "Trust me," he'd said. "This is important." I'd trusted him. I always had. The bookshelf was still there, though it was now filled with Derek's collection of business books and Claire's old teaching manuals. I started pulling books off the shelves, running my hands along the back panel, looking for anything unusual. And then I felt it, a slight give in the wood, a panel that moved when the others didn't. I pressed harder, and the panel popped open with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the quiet house. Behind it was a small cavity, and inside that cavity was a metal box. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip it. The box was heavier than I expected, and it wasn't locked. Tom had never believed in making things too complicated. "If you need something in an emergency," he'd always said, "you shouldn't have to remember a combination." Inside the box, I found papers, legal documents, property deeds, and on top of them all, a letter in Tom's handwriting. "Linda," it read, "by the time you find this, you'll probably need it. I've set up a living trust. The house, the property, all of it, it's yours, not jointly owned, not part of any estate that can be divided or contested. Yours alone. I had our lawyer, Bill Morrison, draw it up 5 years before I got sick. I never told you because I didn't want you to worry, didn't want you to think I was planning to leave you. But I wanted to make sure that no matter what happened, no one could take this from you. This house is your security, your independence, your choice. Always your choice." I read the trust documents. Tom had been thorough. The house was in my name only, held in a revocable living trust that gave me complete control. Claire was listed as beneficiary, but only after my death. And there were conditions even then, stipulations about keeping the property for a certain number of years, clauses that prevented quick sales to benefit sons-in-law who'd married into the family. Tom had seen the future more clearly than I'd given him credit for. I was so absorbed in reading that I didn't hear the car in the driveway, didn't hear the front door open, didn't hear the footsteps on the stairs. "What are you doing in here?" I looked up to find Derek standing in the doorway. His face was red, his jaw clenched. He looked less like the polite son-in-law who'd helped me carry boxes to the basement and more like someone who'd just found an intruder in his home. Except this wasn't his home. That was the point. I'm remembering, I said calmly, clutching the papers to my chest. This used to be my room. My husband proposed to me right here in this exact spot. Did Claire ever tell you that? You need to go back downstairs, he said. Claire's going to be home soon, and she'll be upset if she finds you up here. Will she? I asked. Or is it you who's upset, Derek? He took a step into the room. Linda, I don't want to have to call anyone, but if you're becoming confused, if you're wandering around the house when you shouldn't be. I'm not confused, I said. I'm probably thinking more clearly than I have in months. Tell me something, Derek. This renovation you and Claire keep talking about. When does it start? He blinked. What? The renovation. The reason I'm living in the basement. When do the workers arrive? When does the construction begin? We're still, getting quotes, finding the right contractor. I set the papers down on the bed, keeping my hand on them. And the power of attorney paperwork you've been discussing with Claire. The documents you think will give you control over my assets. When were you planning to present those to me? The color drained from his face. I don't know what you think you heard. I heard everything, I said. Basements are quiet, Derek. Sound travels through floorboards, especially old ones. You should know that. You've been living in this house for what, 3 years now? You should have learned its sounds. Tom did. He knew every creak, every groan. He knew this house would tell me its secrets if I listened. Derek's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Whatever you think is happening. I don't think anything, I interrupted. I know you've been pressuring Claire to get me declared incompetent. I know you've been talking to lawyers about how to gain control of this property. I know you think that because I'm old and widowed and living in your basement, I'm powerless. I picked up the trust documents. But here's what you don't know. This house isn't part of any estate you can access. It's not jointly owned. It's not vulnerable to whatever schemes you've been planning. Tom made sure of that decades ago. This house is mine, Derek. Completely, legally, irrevocably mine. And it will stay mine until the day I die. For a long moment, Derek just stared at me. I could see his mind working, calculating, trying to find an angle. That's what men like Derek do, they strategize. They look for weaknesses to exploit, for loopholes to slip through. But Tom had been smarter than Derek. Tom had loved me more than Derek loved anyone, including himself. And that love had built protections Derek couldn't break. Claire doesn't know about this, Derek finally said. About whatever you're accusing me of, she just wants what's best for you. Does she? I asked. Because moving your mother-in-law to the basement so you can have more space doesn't seem like it's about what's best for anyone but you. She agreed to it. Because you convinced her. Because you made her feel guilty for not being able to take care of me properly. Because you've been slowly poisoning her against me for months, maybe years. Small comments about my memory, about my health, about how much easier things would be if I just weren't in the way. Derek's jaw tightened. You can't prove any of that. I don't have to prove it, I said. I just have to stop it. And these papers do that. These papers mean that no matter what happens, no matter what you convince Claire to do, this house stays mine. My decision, my choice. I walked past him toward the door, still holding the documents. He didn't try to stop me, but I felt his anger like heat radiating off pavement in summer. Where are you going? He asked. To make copies, I said, and to call a lawyer. And then I'm going to have a conversation with my daughter, a real one without you there to mediate or interpret or spin. I didn't go back to the basement. Instead, I went to the kitchen and sat at the table, my table, and waited for Claire to come home. Derek stayed upstairs. I heard him packing, heard the muffled sound of his voice as he made phone calls, probably to a lawyer of his own. Let him. Tom's lawyer had been meticulous. There were no loopholes to find. When Claire came home 40 minutes later, her arms full of grocery bags, she froze in the kitchen doorway. Mom, what are you doing up here? I live here, I said simply. This is my house, Claire. I built it with your father. I raised you in it. I've spent 43 years within these walls. The question isn't what am I doing here. The question is why you thought you could exile me to the basement like I was something to be hidden away. She set the grocery bags down slowly, her face pale. It wasn't like that, we just thought. What did you think? I asked. That I wouldn't notice. That I'd be grateful for the damp and the cold and the isolation. Or did you not think at all? Did you just let Derek convince you that I was too much trouble, too much of a burden, too much of an obstacle to whatever plans he's been making? Mom, please. I found the trust documents, I said, laying the papers on the table between us. Did you know about these? Did you know that your father set up protections years ago? That this house is mine and mine alone until I die? Claire's eyes filled with tears. I didn't. Derek said that you'd want to help us, that you'd want to make things easier for our future, that it was just a matter of getting the paperwork in order. What paperwork, Claire? She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. I could see the truth written on her face. Guilt, shame, the horrible realization that she'd been complicit in something she didn't fully understand. He told me you were getting forgetful, she whispered. That you needed more help than we could give you here, that it would be better for everyone if we could make decisions on your behalf. And you believed him. He's my husband. And I'm your mother, I said. The woman who sat up with you through every childhood fever, who taught you to read, to drive, to stand up for yourself. Except apparently I forgot to teach you to stand up to your husband when he's trying to steal from your own mother. Claire flinched like I'd slapped her. It wasn't stealing, he said. I don't care what he said, I interrupted. I care what you did. You put me in the basement, Claire. You made me feel like I was dying before I was dead. You took everything that made this house a home and you hid it away, just like you hid me. We sat in silence for a long time. I could hear Derek's footsteps upstairs, still packing. Claire stared at her hands, tears dripping onto the table. I'm sorry, she finally whispered. Mom, I'm so sorry, I didn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. He was just so sure, so confident that he knew what was best. He knew what was best for him, I said. And you let him convince you that it was the same thing. What do I do now? She asked, looking up at me with the same expression she'd worn as a little girl when she'd broken something precious and didn't know how to fix it. You make a choice, I said. You decide whether you're married to Derek or to his plans for my house, whether you're my daughter or his accomplice, whether you want a relationship with me built on love or on whatever inheritance you think you're entitled to. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's not. Nothing about this situation is fair, but fairness isn't what we're negotiating anymore. We're negotiating trust. And Claire, you broke it. You put me in the basement and pretended it was for my own good, and I will never forget that feeling. That cold, forgotten feeling. That's something you're going to have to live with. Derek came downstairs eventually, stood in the kitchen doorway with his arms crossed, that fake smile nowhere in sight. I think we all need to calm down, he said. Linda, you're clearly upset, and you're saying things you don't mean. I mean every word, I said. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. We can work this out. We can find a solution that works for everyone. I have a solution, I said. You move out of my house. Today, preferably. Tomorrow at the latest. Take whatever belongs to you and leave. Claire can stay or go, that's her choice. But you, Derek, are no longer welcome in the home my husband built. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I can, I said. Because this is my house, not yours, not even partly yours, mine, and I decide who lives here. Derek looked at Claire. Are you going to let her do this? Claire stared at him for a long moment. I watched her face, saw the war playing out behind her eyes. Finally, she spoke. It is her house, Derek. We're married. To me, Claire said. Not to my mother's property, not to an inheritance you thought you'd be getting, to me. So you're choosing her. I'm choosing what's right, Claire said quietly. I should have chosen it from the start. Derek left that night, took his clothes, his computer, his collection of business books. He went to stay with his brother, Claire told me later, filed for a separation the next week. Divorce papers followed a month after that. Claire stayed in the house for a while, in one of the guest rooms. Not our bedroom, I'd reclaimed that space, though I'd removed all traces of Derek first. We were careful with each other at first, like strangers learning to share space. There were conversations, some painful, where I told her how it felt to be banished to the basement, and she told me how Derek had slowly, systematically convinced her that I was failing, that I needed to be managed, controlled, protected from myself. He made me doubt everything, she told me one night over tea in the kitchen. Your memory, your judgment, your ability to take care of yourself. And I believed him because I wanted to believe that he had our best interests at heart. He had his own interests at heart, I said. Some people are like that. They look at others and see only what they can get. I'm so sorry, Mom. I know you are, I said. And I forgive you. But Claire, you need to understand something. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. I will carry the memory of those weeks in the basement for the rest of my life. That feeling of being erased, of being inconvenient, that's not something that just disappears. I know, she whispered. I know I can't undo it. No, I agreed. But you can do better going forward. You can remember what you learned. You can be stronger the next time someone tries to convince you to betray yourself or someone you love. Eventually, Claire moved into her own apartment across town. We have dinner together once a week now. Sometimes she brings up the past, tries to apologize again, and I gently redirect her. The past is past. What matters is what we do with the present. The house is quiet now, just me and the memories. But it's a good quiet, a comfortable quiet. I've reclaimed every room, filled them back up with the things Derek had tried to erase. My favorite chair is back in the living room. The family photos are back on the wall. The bedroom is mine again, and I sleep better than I have in years. Sometimes I sit in that bedroom where Tom proposed, and I think about foundations, about how the strongest part of any structure is the part you can't see, the part buried beneath everything else, holding it all up. Tom built this house on love, but he built it on protection too. He knew that I might need to stand alone someday. He made sure I could. The trust documents are in a safe deposit box now, along with Tom's letters and some other papers that matter. But I keep copies in the house, in that hidden space behind the bookshelf, just in case, just to remind myself that some things can't be taken, no matter how hard someone tries. People ask me sometimes if I'm lonely, living alone in this big house. The answer is complicated. Yes, I miss Tom every single day. Yes, there are moments when the quiet feels too heavy, when I wish I could hear his footsteps on the stairs or his voice calling from the kitchen. But lonely isn't the same as alone, and alone isn't the same as weak. I am 72 years old. I have arthritis in my hands and my knees don't work like they used to. My memory isn't what it was. Sometimes I walk into a room and forget why I came. I am getting old, and someday I will need help, and there's no shame in that. But I will decide when that day comes. I will choose where I go and who takes care of me and what happens to this house that Tom and I built together. Those choices are mine. They always were. Derek wanted to take those choices from me. He wanted to move me to the basement and keep me there until I was small enough, quiet enough, compliant enough to be managed. He thought that because I was old and widowed and loved my daughter, I would be easy to control. He was wrong. Last week, I went down to the basement for the first time since reclaiming the rest of the house. I stood in that cold space where I'd spent those terrible weeks, and I tried to remember exactly how it felt. The isolation, the invisibility, the slow erosion of dignity. And then I turned off the light and went back upstairs into the sun. Because here's what I learned from being buried. Sometimes you need to go down to the foundation to remember what you're built on. You need to touch the bedrock, feel its solidity, understand that it was there before everything else, and it will remain after everything else is gone. Tom laid that foundation with his own hands. He built it strong enough to hold not just a house, but a life, my life, and no one gets to take that from me. Derek moved me to the basement. He thought he was hiding me away, making me disappear. But all he really did was put me closer to the foundation, the part that never breaks, the part that holds everything up. And when I pressed my hands against those cold cement walls in the dark, I didn't feel buried. I felt rooted. It's spring now. I've planted flowers in the garden. the same ones Tom and I planted that first summer in this house. Roses and hydrangeas and those stubborn black-eyed Susans that come back every year no matter what. Claire helps me sometimes. We kneel in the dirt together, and she tells me about her new job, her new apartment, the therapy she's been going to. She's rebuilding too, in her own way, finding her own foundation. "Do you think Dad knew," she asked me last weekend, "that this might happen, that I might choose wrong?" "I think he hoped you wouldn't," I said. "But he wanted to make sure that even if you did, I'd be okay. That's what love does, sweetheart. It prepares for the worst while hoping for the best." We worked in silence for a while after that. The dirt was warm under my fingers. The sun was bright on my face. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something that wasn't grief or anger or betrayal. I felt peace. Sometimes at night, I stand at the bedroom window and look out over the yard. I can see the whole property from here. The garden, the old oak tree Tom refused to cut down when we were building, the fence line we painted together one summer when Claire was at camp. This is what my son-in-law wanted to take from me. Not just property, not just financial security, but memory, history, the physical space where my love lives. He thought he could move me to the basement, and I would disappear. That I would become small and quiet and convenient. That I would sign whatever papers he put in front of me and be grateful that he was taking care of things. But he forgot something important. He forgot to check what was hidden upstairs. The documents, yes. The trust that protected everything Tom and I built together. But more than that, he forgot to check for strength, for memory, for love that doesn't fade just because the person who gave it is gone. He forgot that basements aren't graves. They're foundations. And you can't bury someone who's standing on solid ground. I'm still here, in my house, in my life, making my own choices and living with my own consequences. I'm not sure how much time I have left, none of us are, but however much it is, it's mine to spend. And when I finally do leave this house, it will be on my terms. Maybe I'll leave it to Claire, with conditions Tom would approve of. Maybe I'll turn it into something else, something that helps other people who have been forgotten or erased or pushed aside. But whatever I choose, it will be my choice. That's the point. That's what Tom's protection gave me, not just security or assets or legal defense. He gave me the right to decide my own story. Derek wanted to write the ending for me, wanted to decide when I stopped being useful, when I became a burden, when my chapter was done. But I'm not done. Not even close. There's a passage in Tom's last letter that I come back to again and again. It's at the very end, written in shakier handwriting than the rest, probably added during those final weeks when his hands weren't steady anymore. "Linda," it says, "I built this house to keep you safe, but safety isn't just about walls and locks and legal documents. Safety is knowing your own worth. It's refusing to be diminished. It's standing in the space you've earned and saying, 'I belong here.' Promise me you'll remember that. Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel like you don't matter." I keep that promise every day. Every time I climb the stairs, Derek said we're too dangerous. Every time I make coffee in the kitchen, he wanted to control. Every time I sleep in the bedroom, he tried to claim. Every time I simply exist in the space Tom and I created together, I keep that promise. The thing about being buried is that it teaches you what you're made of. It strips away everything comfortable and convenient and reveals what's underneath. It shows you your foundation. And my foundation is strong. It's built on 43 years in this house, on 37 years of marriage, on memories of a man who loved me enough to protect me even after he was gone, on the painful lesson of being forgotten and the empowering realization that I didn't need anyone's permission to matter. Derek thought he could bury me. He was wrong. Because the thing about foundations is that they're already buried. They're beneath everything else, holding it all up. You can't diminish what's fundamental. You can't erase what's essential. You can't bury bedrock. I'm sitting in the kitchen now, in the late afternoon light. The same light that was here when Tom and I first moved in. The same light that will be here long after I'm gone. There's something comforting about that, about the way light doesn't care about ownership or inheritance or who thinks they have the right to what. Light just is. It fills whatever space it finds. It illuminates what's hidden. It makes everything visible. Derek wanted to keep me in the dark. He wanted me small and hidden and manageable. But I'm done with the dark. I'm done with basements, literal and metaphorical. I'm done with making myself smaller so other people can feel bigger. I'm done with silence that protects the wrong people. This is my house, built on my husband's love and my own stubborn refusal to disappear, and I will stand in it, in the light, for as long as I draw breath. There's a young woman who lives down the street. I see her sometimes when I'm working in the garden. She waves, calls out hello. Last week, she stopped by with her grandmother, who was visiting from out of state. "My Nana wanted to meet you," she said. "I told her about your house, about how you and your husband built it together. She loved that story." The grandmother was about my age, maybe a bit older. We sat on the porch and drank lemonade and talked about what it means to build something that lasts. Not just houses, but lives, marriages, legacies. "My daughter wants me to move in with her," the grandmother told me quietly, while her granddaughter was inside using the bathroom. "Her husband thinks it makes sense. They have the space, he says. It would be easier." The way she said, "easier," I recognized that tone. The weight of a word that means something different to everyone who uses it. "What do you want?" I asked. She looked surprised, like no one had asked her that in a very long time. I'm not sure anyone cares what I want." "I care," I said, "and you should care. You've earned the right to decide your own life." She was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I have my own place, a small apartment I've lived in for 20 years. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine." "Then keep it," I said. "If that's what you want, keep it. Don't let anyone convince you that their convenience is more important than your autonomy." When they left, the grandmother hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered. "I needed to hear that from someone who understands." I do understand. Maybe that's why I'm telling this story. Not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been told they're too much trouble. Too old. Too inconvenient. Too in the way. You're not. You matter. Your choices matter. And no one gets to decide your worth except you. I've been thinking about what I'll do with this house eventually. It's too big for one person, really. Too many rooms, too many memories, too much space for someone my age. But size isn't the point. The point is that it's mine to decide. I could sell it, move somewhere smaller, use the money for travel or charity or whatever I want. I could leave it to Claire with the understanding that she'll never let anyone treat it, or anyone in it, the way Derek tried to treat me. I could turn it into something that serves other people, a place where those who have been forgotten can remember their own worth. I haven't decided yet, and that's okay. I have time. Not infinite time, none of us do, but enough. Enough to sit with the question, enough to consider all the possibilities. Enough to make a choice that feels right, not rushed or pressured or manipulated. Tom gave me that gift, time to decide, space to breathe, the foundation to stand on while I figure out where I want to go next. Yesterday, Claire brought me something. A small wooden box, nothing fancy. Inside was a letter she'd written to me. "I can't say it out loud yet," she told me. "Not all of it, but I needed you to have this, to know what I've been thinking about, what I've been learning." I read it after she left. It was pages long, handwritten, full of crossed-out words and restart attempts. It talked about how Derek had isolated her from me slowly, so slowly she didn't notice until it was done. How he'd made her question her own perceptions, her own mother, her own judgment. How he'd turned love into obligation and obligation into resentment and resentment into the willingness to believe that putting me in the basement was somehow kind. "I was so stupid," she wrote. "I let him convince me that caring for you was a burden instead of a privilege, that your age made you less instead of more, that wanting to help you meant controlling you. I'm so ashamed, Mom. But more than that, I'm grateful. Grateful that you're strong enough to stand up even when I wasn't. Grateful that Dad loved you enough to protect you even from me. Grateful that you're still here, still fighting, still refusing to disappear." The letter ended with a question. How do I make sure I never do this again? To you or to anyone? How do I become someone who protects instead of someone who harms? I called her that evening, told her the answer isn't simple, that it's a practice, not a destination, that it means questioning your assumptions, especially when they're convenient, that it means listening to the people you love, even when what they're saying makes you uncomfortable, that it means recognizing that care isn't the same as control, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and trust someone to live their own life. Even if they make mistakes, she asked. Especially if they make mistakes, I said, because those are their mistakes to make, their lessons to learn, their life to live. I've started writing things down, not just for me, but for whoever comes after. A sort of manual for living in this house, but also a manual for living with dignity when the world tries to take it from you. I write about the foundation, both the literal concrete foundation that holds up these walls and the metaphorical foundation that holds up a life. I write about Tom and the way love can reach across death to protect you. I write about Claire and the way forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but does mean choosing connection over bitterness. And I write about Derek, not to demonize him, but to document him. To say clearly, this is what it looks like when someone sees you as an obstacle instead of a person. This is what it sounds like when care is just a mask for control. This is how slowly you can be erased if you're not paying attention. These words are my insurance policy, not legal like Tom's trust documents, but personal. A record that says, I was here, I mattered, I refused to disappear. And if you're reading this because someone is trying to make you disappear, know that you can refuse too. You have that power, even when they tell you that you don't. Especially then. The seasons are changing again. Fall is coming, my favorite time of year. The light gets softer, more golden. The air smells like wood smoke and possibility. Tom and I used to sit on the back porch in the fall and watch the leaves change, and I do that still. Sometimes Claire joins me. We don't talk much. We just sit and watch and exist in the same space without needing it to be anything more than that. Last week she asked me, "Are you happy, Mom, living here alone?" I thought about it. Happy isn't quite the right word, I said, but I'm content, I'm at peace. I'm living the life I choose in the space I earned. That's worth more than happy. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Standing up to Derek, everything that happened after. No, I said without hesitation. I regret the weeks in the basement. I regret that you felt caught in the middle. I regret that our family broke apart. But standing up, reclaiming my own life, no, I will never regret that. She nodded. I'm glad, I think you taught me something I needed to learn, about strength, about what it means to love yourself enough to set boundaries. You'll teach it to someone else someday, I said. That's how these lessons work. We learn them, often the hard way, and then we pass them on. We become the voice that tells someone else, you matter, don't let them bury you. I think about that word a lot now. Bury, what it means, what it implies. Derek thought he was burying me when he moved me to the basement, putting me underground, out of sight, away from the life happening above. But burial means different things, depending on what you're burying. Bury a seed, and it grows. Bury a treasure, and it's protected. Bury a foundation, and it holds everything up. Derek thought he was eliminating a problem. What he actually did was put me in position to understand my own strength, to touch the bedrock of who I am, to recognize that I didn't need anyone's permission or approval to matter. In trying to bury me, he helped me grow. I don't think I'll ever thank him for that. Let's not get carried away. But I can acknowledge it. I can recognize that sometimes our antagonists teach us more than our allies. They force us to become stronger, clearer, more certain of who we are and what we won't tolerate. Derek taught me that I will not be diminished. That lesson is worth remembering. There's a woman at the senior center who's been asking me to speak to a group she's organizing. Women who are navigating difficult family dynamics, who are being pressured to give up their independence, who are being told that being old means being powerless. I've been hesitant. I'm not a public speaker. I'm just someone who stood up for herself when it mattered. But maybe that's exactly why I should speak, because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a grand gesture or a Hollywood moment. It was just a woman in her 70s, sitting in a cold basement, deciding that she deserved better. And then taking steps, small, practical steps, to make better happen. If my story can help even one person recognize their own worth, isn't that worth the discomfort of sharing it? I told the woman I'd think about it, but I think we both know what my answer will be. Tom used to say that a house isn't just shelter, it's a statement. It says, I was here, I built this, I made something that will outlast me. This house is my statement. But more than that, my life is my statement. The fact that I'm still here, still choosing, still standing in the light, that's my message to the world. You can try to erase me, diminish me, bury me. You can tell me I'm too old, too much trouble, too in the way. But I get to decide when my story is over. And I'm not done writing it yet. The sun is setting now. The light is doing that thing it does in autumn where it turns everything gold and amber and impossibly beautiful. I'm sitting in the kitchen, my kitchen, watching the way the light falls across the table where Tom and I ate 10,000 meals together. This is what Derek wanted to take from me, not just a house or money or legal rights. He wanted to take moments like this. Quiet, ordinary, precious moments where I exist fully in the space I've earned. He failed. I'm still here. Still watching the light. Still choosing my own story. Still refusing to disappear. And every day that I wake up in this house, in my bedroom, in my life, every day is a quiet victory. Not over Derek, really. Over the voice that says old means powerless. That says being alone means being weak. That says needing help someday means you should surrender your autonomy now. That voice is wrong. And I'm living proof. I don't know how this story ends yet. That's the thing about living your own life. You write it as you go. No one can tell you what the last chapter looks like because you haven't written it yet. Maybe I'll live in this house until I'm 90. Maybe I'll decide next year that it's time for something different. Maybe Claire and I will renovate it together. A real renovation this time, not a pretend one designed to move me out of the way. Whatever happens, it will be my choice. That's what Tom's foundation gave me. Not just concrete and legal documents, but the solid ground of self-determination. The knowledge that I have the right to decide my own path. Derek tried to take that from me. He should have checked what was hidden upstairs. Not just papers and proof of ownership, but strength, memory, love that doesn't die just because the person who gave it is gone. And the absolute, unshakable certainty that I am worth fighting for. Even if I have to do the fighting myself. Sometimes, late at night, I go upstairs to the bedroom and stand in the spot where Tom proposed. I close my eyes and I can almost feel him there, solid and real, his hands rough from work, his voice soft with love. This is where I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. He didn't get the rest of his life. Cancer took that from us, but he gave me the rest of mine. He made sure that no matter what happened, I would have this place, this choice, this foundation. And standing there in the dark, in the room we shared, in the house we built, I make him a promise. I will not waste this gift. I will live fully, choose boldly, refuse to be diminished. I will stand in the light and cast my own shadow. I will remember that basements aren't graves, they're foundations. And I will never, ever forget what I'm worth. My son-in-law moved me to the basement. He thought he was burying me. He should have checked what was hidden upstairs. He should have known that you can't bury someone who's already built on solid ground. He should have realized that some foundations can't be broken. He should have understood that love, real love, doesn't just build houses. It builds strength that lasts long after the builder is gone. Tom built me a house. But more than that, he built me a way to stand. And I'm still standing. In the light. On my own terms. In the home we built together. And no one, not my son-in-law, not convenience, not age, not expectation, will move me from this spot until I'm ready to move myself. This is my foundation. This is my choice. This is my life. And I'm not done living it yet. Not even close.